Hello and welcome to Kimboshi Radio, where Nick, we are back with yet another young star rising, but we'll get into it. How you doing?
It's another beautiful day to talk about sumo.
Every day's a beautiful day to talk about sumo.
Exactly. Yeah, this was a really cool one, and as a spoiler for everybody else, you actually got to see some of it.
Dude, yeah, I'm still exhausted. That's okay. So it did make some things harder. But like, we're all caught up on all the matches for days I might have missed. But yeah, I went to the Mecca. I was in the Kokugikon for this. I saw actually the first throwdown between Onosato and Kotozakura live, which turned out to be prescient because it was really those two guys coming down for this Basho. But in the end, the new guy, Onosato, the Shin Komusubi, ends up winning this tournament. And I mean, we knew he was special. I did not think this was going to happen. I thought with his debut at Komusubi, I was thinking maybe 9-6. Just because, but I guess because we'd seen him sort of struggle against these top rankers, but I guess 2 Basho was enough to get him straightened out. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I'm like, when you flip from to Komusubi, it's typically a really hard transition that 90% of them kind of bomb, at least the first time, which makes sense because it's like your roster's a lot harder. And, even if he fought, I saw somewhere they were like, oh, well, he beat Terunofuji, but he was injured. But I'm like, but then he beat Kirishima, Kotozakura, Atamifuji, Daisho. Like, he beat everybody he needed to.
And let's not forget, I mean, just so that we don't forget to talk about him later, because there's so much other stuff to talk about, but Daisho was on a tear. Daisho looked great this Basho. So a win against Daisho here where he was motivated to get his Sekiwake rank back, like, that's big.
Yes, and this was another one where Kotozakura was just chasing that Yusho win so close, and he managed to beat them all.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. So, I mean, well, here, let's do it this way. We put up a poll, and thank you for everyone who commented, because these are things that I think Nick and I were super curious about. Um, of basically, we broke it down into everyone in sumo. We'll show you some stats we were looking at. There's like millennials are kind of broken in half because that generation is so big. So you got millennial Y1 versus millennial Y2, or as I affectionately call them, Ninja Turtles millennials versus Power Rangers millennials. And then Gen Z, who is also a pretty big generation and will be broken in half, but the other half of them are like 12 right now, so they don't count. Um, but looking at these sort of breakdowns and the fact that Kotozakura and Onosato are both in that Gen Z up and coming generation, we looked at Hoshoryu, Kotozakura, Takerufuji, because he one of the most recent Basho winners, and then Onosato, and asked people who they thought had the best chance of like the best possible career moving forward. And overwhelmingly the results fell to Onosato, which I don't know, Nick, talk me through this. Like maybe a bit of recency bias, but I mean when he came up, you and I still talked about how we thought Yokozuna was the end game for him.
Yes, and I mean, I think he's proved that point. The performance going 12-3. This was, I believe, his best tournament actually.
Yes, it was because he's done something really impressive. He's run off 3 11-win Bashos in a row, I think, something like, because I think his last Juryo Basho was also an 11-win tournament. But like he already has the numbers, like he already has what he needs to go to Ozeki if those earlier tournaments had been higher ranked. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
they'll never count, and they shouldn't. They'll never count 11 wins in the M10 or below as the same caliber as 11 wins at M1.
No, and of course, and so it'll be interesting to see that now he will very likely be the other Sekiwake to see if he
Mhm.
can do this twice in a row. And I think if he can, I think that's kind of proof. It's hard. I mean, half the Sanyaku were so out of it this time that it's like it's hard to fully gauge it. But I think he can do it. But
Yeah.
for some reason, I still lean towards like when you talked about the poll. I don't know why. My brain tells me Kotozakura, which is weird because in that list, he's now the only one who has not won a U show.
I know. That's why I picked the guys I did for that poll, because it's like he feels like the most solid, and we've talked before about how he's made sort of a steady climb up as opposed to guys who get the jetpack, which you and I are not fans of, but it happens. Um, but he just can't get over it. And now guys like Takerufuji and Onosato kind of jumping the line on him here. Like it's one thing for Hoshoryu, who's also been consistent and up here grinding for a long time, because it's insane in the long run when you look at how successful and consistent he's been at the age. Born in 1999, so young. Um, but Kotozakura has not been able to get over that hump, and especially kind of heartbreaking the last few Basho, like, but it doesn't change my impression of him really. But I think it does yours. And you mentioned injuries. I'm blabbering now because there's so many interconnected topics, which is why we love sumo is these storylines. But I think about someone like Takayasu, so obviously so good, so deserving of his Ozeki rank when he had it. We're still rooting for him to get it back. We saw in this tournament he had to sit out yet again with these lumbar injuries, this sort of like lower back spasms because he's got these herniated discs, just old man problems, which is funny because I believe he's like a year younger than you and me. But basically, my fear, my ultimate dread situation with Kotozakura is like, oh no, is this another Takayasu? A guy who's obviously so good and just gets stuck down there? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think at this point, like obviously he's a solid Ozeki, but I think just not he just can't, like you said, he just can't get that final little bit. Like he loses just enough to constantly be coming in like second place.
And why
Where I'm
not?
like,
Why do you think that's happening? Like, break down his losses for me. Like, what is happening?
I honestly I don't. It's tough because it's like he's losing to. Well, I mean, Abi this time. Everybody loses to him eventually.
Abi, we've talked
Takayasu.
before. Abi's the little sniper. Man, he will ruin your basho.
Yes, he's honestly been a really important deciding factor several times.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But like you,
he lost Abi, Takayasu, Onosato, Daisho. It's like he loses to really solid people that you're like, oh, it's not a surprise, but it's just enough.
hmm yeah, you can't do that.
No, and it's like he just I don't. I think he faces really hard competition in the
Yeah,
Sanyaku, and it's like he just. And some of it could be like you said, he's a little young, but I mean, like Onosato did it at least once. Like he just needs to do it at least once.
right. Right, exactly. Like again, Hoshoryu's already done it once and had a really impressive runner-up showing. Kotozakura obviously is the runner-ups are not the problem, but yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'm looking at his I don't know, and it was such a weird tournament like you said. Well, here, okay, let's circle back. So we've got these four guys. You and I are both I don't know, not concerned about how good Kotuzakura's gonna be, but like confused about why he hasn't broken through. So, by the way, in the comments, if you guys can help me understand it, I would appreciate because you guys have super insightful comments as well. Like, what is happening? And I know the easy route is to say something about mental game or whatever, and I understand that I just did that like um with other wrestlers in this same conversation, but I don't think it's that because since he's made it up to Sekiwake, I love that mean mug he puts on now when he's entering the ring and stuff like that. I think he has worked on his mental game. I don't know if he needs more luck to fall his way, but like how much more luck can you ask for in this tournament? Because Nick, you already brought it up, but like Terunofuji comes in and drops out right away. Takakeisho drops out. Kirishima ends up dropping out, which we need to talk about because he was Kadoban, and so now he's losing that Ozeki rank. Um, and then Wakamoto Haru gets injured, so he sits out. Asano Yama was out before the tournament. Like, the Sanyaku was gone. This was a golden opportunity, and Onosato capitalized, Kotozakura didn't.
Yes, and like you said, I think a good chunk of it is luck, but this should, like you had said, this should have been the time where he got enough. He should have gotten two more. He
Mhm.
should have happened.
Yeah. I mean, and you put your finger on it. I love watching both of these guys or whatever, but like Kotozakura should have beaten both Abi and Takayasu, and he should have put this to bed with 13 wins. Onosato, it's fine that he lost to Onosato. We've talked before about how those two guys fight similar styles and have similar frames and size. And so that's going to be a tough matchup for him. Now it's going to be a 50-50 matchup. There's no reason he can't win that one, but like that's fine to lose that. But he needed to put it to bed on a an ailing Takayasu and Abi who is good, but you know what he's bringing. You know, it's not necessarily unpredictable.
And then Hoshoryu just constantly, as always, grinding out his 10 wins, just
Yeah.
staying rock solid.
And hey, let's talk about that. I know we're going to talk about the injuries in a second here, but I want to go back. I was going back through the comments. Yeah, sorry, team. It's been a lot of life changes of late, and so Nick and I've been super tied up. But I finally got through and replied to a big backlog of comments, and there were a lot of comments about Hoshoryu, as there always were. And kind of where my head is at now is like, I think I give I think I'm unfair and don't give enough credit to Hoshoryu's consistency when I do give the appropriate amount to Takakeisho's. Like, we're big Takakeisho defenders when he grinds out 10 wins or when he comes back hurt and gets 8 wins to shed Kadoban status, stuff like that. And so I kind of finally had this moment clicking in my head where I'm like, Hoshoryu does the same or better. Like, I need to be more on him. Like, now he's got 4 double-digit win tournaments in a row. One where he missed in January, he missed the last 2 days with injury and already had 10. And that's where he was again contending for a U show. Like, I think that his consistency is so much more impressive than for some reason my brain is allowing me to believe. Like, we go back to that poll, right? Like, maybe Hoshoryu is the most impressive one.
I think I get very easily distracted sometimes with like these huge like spikes and like these fun wins, like Onosato coming out and blowing everybody up, and that I miss that, like, because Hoshoryu is just like so steady that I think I just miss it. But like you said, it's been a long he's had a long, very consistent. It may be a little bit boring, but he's doing it. He's doing exactly what he should be.
Right. Flashy things like Takerufuji are really impressive, and I'm not trying to dog on the guy, but then, Isegahama forces Takerufuji to come back and finish that Basho with injury, as Isegahama always does. And then Takerufuji misses literally the entire next Basho. Like, I think it's no surprise that, like, a guy who a lot of our listeners were really high on, now kind of the bottom fell out. And, we can call it recency bias or we can call it realism. It's whatever. But yeah, got like no support in that poll, even though he's a young guy who just won that out of nowhere. But then to your credit, like Hoshoryu keeps grinding.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I think we'll see. I think Hoshoryu is going to stay up there. He and Kotozakura will switch. And I think it's just gonna be. I think it's gonna be a long time of those two just kind of flipping back and forth for the top Ozeki spot.
Right, and it's just a matter of time until the changing of the guard officially happens, where we've talked before, Keisho is just waiting it out until he can get Elder Stock, and Terunofuji, I mean, we have to talk about it. It was the whole lead premise of our last video is like, hey, is this finally the last hurrah where he's gonna win and then ride off into the sunset? And I don't know, apparently not. Apparently he just wants to get one last Basho to get to 10 no matter what. But everything he was saying, he turned down that surgery so that he could fight in this tournament and then to pull out after a day. And like the Yokozuna Council is not going to force him to retire, but other people in the JSA are talking about, oh, they're all grumpy and they're like, well, he needs to consider his role. Fans are paying for tickets to see him and he can't come to one day and drop out if it doesn't look. I don't know, man. I guess he's staying in, but he's not healthy. Blah, blah.
It's one of those weird ones where I actually agree with some of the people in the JSA, which is kind of shocking depending on the
Feels
circumstance.
dirty. Feels dirty.
Where I'm like, man, he collapsed on day one. I'm like, maybe it is just time. Like, I know like the ultimate goal was that 10 win, but like you said, he turned down surgery, collapsed day one. Like, it might just be time. And who knows? There's a good chance he could come back in July and just murder everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I thought he should retire after he got that 14-1 U show, and he proved me wrong by coming back and winning another U show 13-2, and that's what made the 10 possible. Um, However, those are the only 2 Basho he's completed in 2 years. So like I get it. I get that if he can make it through a tournament reasonably healthy, he wins it, so he doesn't want to hang it up. And I get that the JSA don't want him to hang it up because they want a Yokozuna or whatever, but I'm like, yeah, but 2 tournaments in 2 years? You guys were dogging Kakuryu and Hoshoryu for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's what makes it so tempting for him is that he knows just recover and rest, and it's like, and you will win, and he's so close. Just that one more. I think it's just for somebody who's obviously so competitive and a top level athlete like him, I think it's too tempting.
Right, right. So, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts on any of the other injuries or any other of these sort of next gen coming up? The dudes born between 97 and 2002. Any other thoughts on either of those fronts? Yeah.
I would say the last thing I want to touch on the injury
Yeah.
is Takayasu sits out for 5 days, comes back and wins 5 of his 7 matches. So absolutely just want to shout that out. Like he took out so many high level people and it was fantastic.
It's so true. I thought he was gonna Kachikoshi. In the end, he barely missed it or whatever. But like you said, like that's insane. Competing half a tournament and he's just I love Big Papa, man, and it's gonna be heartbreaking when he finally retires, especially because at this point, like if these back spasms are gonna keep up, like we talk about Terunofuji needing one last perfect ride, Takayasu needs one last perfect ride, but I think that ship sailed when he had the three runner-ups of recent memory. One of those needed to be it. Um,
Yep.
but it doesn't matter. He's still really impressive, even with these young guys coming up. He still holds it down up there, and when he's healthy, definitely fights at Ozeki grade. It's just unmistakable. And then when you talk about comebacks and stuff like that, just I touched on Isegahama a little bit, but I got a bone to pick with them. Just like now that they have the Miyagino stable merged into them, like when we're talking about young generations, Hakuoho, even younger than the guys in the poll. He's actually born in 2003, but I don't know. The JSA and Isegahama, I think, have wrecked that guy. They Isegahama had Atami Fuji come back and keep fighting with an injured shoulder. He rushed back Hakuoho with it because Hakuoho, when he was still in charge of the stable, was telling Hakuoho, "No, sit out at least one more tournament. Your shoulder's not healed yet." Hakuoho gets merged into Isegahama, and Isegahama's like, "No, you have to fight now. We have to clear up this mess of this dark shadow. You got to fight." He freaking looks like garbage, and he ended up pulling out and coming back at least in this tournament and grinding out. Like the flashes are still there, but I'm frustrated because what I thought was going to be a great rivalry moving into the future between Onosato and Hakuoho. Now I'm like, what has happened to Hakuoho?
I think, like you had said, continually coming back on that injury, losing the stable master, like at that caliber, like Isakahama, obviously the stable is full of stars, and it's like, is he going to get the same level of attention? There's so many people. I I think he'll grind out for a little bit, and then I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up dropping out. I mean, he's young. He basically just kind of spit in his face with his mentor, like all these weird transitions. He might just walk away.
Yeah, I mean, four Miyaginos did, and the rumblings have been this'll. I don't know that on our listener base there's a huge following for him, but on like Sumo Reddit and stuff, Enho's one of the most popular wrestlers, and there's been rumblings the whole time that Enho's not coming back, that he's just kind of riding this out, and he's never gonna fight again because of what happened. Because he was a Miyagino guy. He's like, I was only staying in this for Miyagino, and if he's gone, I don't care. Um, I think this isn't done. I think four Miyagino guys have quit now, and I don't think we're done.
Yes, no, and I think after seeing that, seeing all these people walk away from it, it's got to be very difficult for somebody that young.
Yeah. I mean, he's too big of a talent to quit right now, but unless something happens to help him along here, or unless like if he can stick it out for a couple years and then the JSA give Miyagino his stable back and Hakuoho can maybe you know what I mean? Maybe there's something to hold out for. But yeah, I the collateral damage of this Hokuseiho stuff is extremely frustrating. And as Chris Sumo brought up in a recent video, like the JSA are so callous with this, like the guy's getting punished. I don't get me wrong. Hokuseiho received a punishment and it was heavy and hefty, but so many guys who didn't do anything are getting punished by this. And I believe one of the retirees was the wrestler who Hokuseiho had bullied. So I'm like, cool. Good job, JSA. You ruined the career of the victim? Like great. Awesome. Like, ugh. Okay, let's change topics to another sad topic, but one that's most frustrating. Just because I do want to touch those injuries. Half the Sanyaku were out. Um, is there a change? We've talked about this a little bit. Chris Sumo brought up in a recent video this idea. I guess there used to be a rule that if the injury you received was received on the dohyo in the tournament, then you could have your ranking preserved and stuff like that. You and I have talked before about giving everyone like one wild card, where basically how Ozeki get to go to Kadoban. Like, just let everyone do that once in a year or something. I understand that there are risks of abuse in there and that it ends up damaging guys lower ranked because if someone who doesn't deserve the rank is being kept there, then that's less wages, less Juryo guys that can come up and get that pay raise which they deserve. Um, so it's not perfect. Do you have any other ideas? Like, I'm just spitballing, and by the way, listeners too, like throw in the comments if you have ideas, but like this is not sustainable. This is not what anyone wants. So let's just start talking about it because like there has to be something better if this isn't it.
Yeah, I kind of like a like you said like a modified Katabon. Like there's some type, or even if you limit like how far they can drop, just something to motivate them. Because like it's not super exciting when half the Sanyaku drops out. Like that's a huge red flag,
Hmm.
and like that's not what fans want to see either.
Hmm.
But like you said, you also don't want people to like try to game the system and how to stay like in the higher range just for the money. And it would be
Exactly.
interesting to see some type of like something, just like even like a baby step in that direction, just to kind of take it slow and figure out what would work.
Right. Like, let's just try some stuff, cause man, it's not good, and it's not good for their careers. And sumo, I'll say this. I should do a video later on, maybe if people are interested. Let me know. But of more thoughts from in the Kokugi-Con, like again, Kurasumo, he's apparently just like my my number one because I keep bringing him up or whatever. But this really interesting video where one of the segments he compared Sumo, the JSA, to these traditional Japanese theater companies, which if you're listening from a European or American base, which I think because we're English speaking, most of our fans are, but think of them as like a Shakespearean troupe, right? Like all your actors travel together. They may play different parts in different plays, and they have their home theater that they play in and stuff like that. But they generally have a dedicated crowd. Maybe other people come in, but it's generally the same audience and the same actors and stuff like that. So that was really interesting to me. Because also like basically like you don't need the high rankers to bring the crowds in. That was super obvious to me. You want to know who got like the biggest cheers in that friggin' arena? It's like Endo, a dude fighting in Juryo. Like the people just have their favorites. They love who they love, you know? And so this all this talk from the JSA of like, well, we need to have a Yokozuna or the fans won't come. I think they're just wrong. And if they honestly believe that, I think they're also idiots because they're in the Kokugi-Con same as I was. And I'm like, nah, dude. Like, Ura is out there running off 6 wins and then losing 8 in a row to Makekoshi after leading the tournament. And it doesn't matter. Those towels, those pink towels are flying. Everybody loves him. Um, they just they love who they love. And so I think you're going to be fine. Um, so we were lucky in this case to turn it back. Half the Sanyaku were hurt and stuff like that. But guys like one, Abi stepped it up in Sekiwake, and obviously Onosato stepped it up at Komusubi, but also Daisho at M1 fought like a Sekiwake, so we still had that. And Hiradoumi really stepped it up and kind of fought like a Komusubi. So like it fixes itself. We don't want the high rankers hurt and stuff like that. And so we don't want them freezing because we would hate to see guys like Daisho getting blocked from the repromotion or Hiradomi blocked from what's going to be his Komusubi debut. Um, but like if they're worried that doing these freezes are gonna like hurt fan engagement, I would disagree. That's my one takeaway. That's all I'm trying to say.
No, I totally agree. Like it's even for me, like I my number one favorite wrestler is Abi, and he is all over the place. It doesn't matter. Like he could be Yokozuna, he could drop down to Juryo, and I'd still be following mostly for his matches.
Yeah, exactly. So, you pick your guy either because you like his style or like his fighting style, or maybe you like his style in Yukata. I don't know, but it doesn't matter why people pick who they like. They just like them. And honestly, I think that's a sign of a healthier sport. And it's good for your wrestlers, diversify these fan clubs and stuff like that. Which another thing, like, dude, things that I'd heard about, but then seeing them in reality, like, yeah, sumo is a female dominated sport. So many just like middle-aged women who just have business jobs, you know what I mean? Like are just out there grinding in their everyday life, and then Sumo is their release. It's like I'd been told it, and then you see it for reality or whatever. But like the fan clubs and the cheering sections and stuff are almost from what I was seeing were like almost all female. Um and and loyal and dedicated is I guess what I'm trying to say is like again, they had their people they love. There was I believe it was Hoshoryu and Wakamoto Haru were fighting maybe the day I was there. Or it might have been Daiichi. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. But like the two fan bases got into this duel, this like of like doing their chants for them. And again, it's all female voices that I heard. So like the fans are dedicated. They stick with their people no matter what.
That's so cool that I actually didn't know that, and that makes it actually even cooler.
Yeah, I know. It's so interesting. Like sumo's a combat sport. Like you look at MMA, which I got a lot of problems with MMA, and I personally I don't watch it. It's fine. But like, I mean, I got more problems with boxing. You know, I'm not trying to criticize anyone in particular, but like, what I'm trying to say is that boxing and MMA, the combat sports that are most popular in America, extremely male dominated. So it was so interesting to see Japan's combat sport be female dominated.
That's what I was thinking. Like, just because those in the U.S., it's typically like dudes like 25 to like 40. Like, just you don't see very many women. And to hear that that's flipped is very interesting.
Right, right. And and then like when you like I don't know, my cousin growing up who is female or whatever was a huge like pro wrestling fan or whatever, which is another thing that you think of as being predominantly male. But then like I don't know, then like she would get this reputation from of like being a tomboy or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh no, it's we're
Yeah,
not saying that women don't like and watch MMA and boxing or whatever, but then they tend to get like pigeonholed or whatever. Whereas here, like I said, these are just regular old business ladies, just got a regular job. They're just, but then they're showing up. This is what they love.
that's awesome.
The ladies behind us, were super helpful and nice, and they were from Akita, which you and I talked about Akita, where I had lived in Japan and is the North Dakota of Japan. So but like again, middle aged business ladies just hanging out, loving sumo.
Amazing.
Yeah. Um.
Um,
Oh, you go. You
oh,
go.
I was gonna say one other thing before we wrap up that we could touch on is the return of Wakatakakage.
Dude, crushed it. Like Endo, again, to his credit, looked awesome in Jurio and still had a good tournament. Still got 12 wins. So happy to see that he's going to be coming back. But in that race, let me look. Was it 13 or 14? Because I think it was 14 wins Wakatakakage got down there. I think he destroyed Jurio this time.
Yes, yeah, 14-1.
Just obliterates them. Which, like, love to see him come back. How you feeling about his return?
Uh, good. I still am curious to see. I think it's going to be a real struggle for him to get back up to Sekewake. There is a difference in the upper ranks now than when he was up there before. But I think he's going to cruise through lower Makuuchi.
Yeah, I think like I don't know. We still keep threatening to do it, but we've never gotten around to it talking about our fantasy sumo league and how we play it with our friends and stuff like that. But like, oh yeah, he's on everyone's draft board as the number one pick in the next tournament down in those low low Makuuchis because he should have just like 10 free wins built in and then have to start fighting the tournament leaders, you know?
Yes, and it's as we've seen before, it's wildly unpredictable to see when they come back if they can really hang with like the top guys. But he's too talented to be below. I think at least I'd be surprised if he wasn't Komusubi or close by the end of the year.
I think that's fair. It's like he's got half a year to do it, but like July, September, November, three tournaments. We just saw what Onosato did. Like he needs to be not not perfect, but there's not a lot of wiggle room. But after this 14-1, I'm really impressed. I think I think he's gonna look good. Um and then besides him, I did want to touch our boy Aonishiki down in Makushita did go 6-1. He will not 6-1 is definitely not. I mean, I don't even think 7-1 would have been enough to get him up. Because he was all the way down at I believe Makushita 40. Yeah, he was Makushita 40. Um, lost to Kusano, who was a guy who was also who ended up being I believe 6-1 in the end because Fuji Seun won the tournament. But like, this is what you and I wanted to see when you were saying like that you wanted to see him take a loss and bounce back from it, and he's now done it again, and he's still out there grinding. And I really do think. this guy has a promising career coming up. Now the next big test is to see him in Juryo, but like hopefully he can run off another 6-1 in July in Nagoya, and then in the Kokogikon we see that boy debuting at Juryo.
Yes, I'm super excited for his rise up to like really get to see what he can do.
Yeah, me too. But other than that, great Basho, super exciting, setting the table for the future and what's to come. We're sitting here right on the crux of this changing of the guard, but the old guard are still holding out. Like we said, Takakeisho, hope to see him come back healthy, and Terunofuji, still all these question marks of like, is he going to be able to do one last ride? And so I don't know, man. Tons of exciting stuff looking forward, and can't wait until Nagoya. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you again soon.